Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Sarah Hammond. Sarah Hammond is the president of Atlas Electric and Air Conditioning, Refrigeration and Plumbing Services Incorporated, a company located in Alton. Atlas Electric and Air Conditioning, a family business over 36 years old. She is also CFO of Hummingbird Trailer Park in Alton Xplex, a leasing center, and has other real estate and entrepreneur investments. She serves currently on 2 national boards, a Texas board, and local community organizations. She was published in 100 Words and 100 Women by South Texas College and published in the McAllen Chamber Ad in I Am Latino magazine. She was also featured in the special edition of the Amazon's Watch magazine as one of the top 20 global women to watch in 2016. In December 2017, she graduated with a certificate in scaling business from Stanford University, graduate of School of Business. She was accepted to Leadership Texas 2020 along with many other recognitions. However, although business and community involvement is important, what brings most happiness to Sarah is her family. She is married to Coach Marty Hammond, and together they have 3 strong daughters. Today we talked about Sarah's story, how she was kidnapped, handcuffed, crossing the border naked, beaten until she was unrecognizable. This is a story that is like a Lifetime movie. And she certainly goes from that desperate moment to becoming a voice and a leader for women, and teaches us how we train people, how they should treat us by what we tolerate and what we shouldn't tolerate, and how to become a leader as a woman. There were so many nuggets and tidbits, and this was such a rags to riches story, just in all ways, just how she developed so strong of a character and a role model for women everywhere, of how they can be strong no matter what their situation and their adversity that they're facing. There's just so much in this episode. I just want to dive in so we can get to it and you guys can hear this heart-rending story of how Sarah became the president of Atlas. You guys, I am so excited about this episode today. We have the amazing Sarah Hammond with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So excited to be here. I've been following you, watching your platform and listening to your podcast. So I'm really inspired. Very inspiring work you do. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I equally am so inspired. I am so excited to be speaking at the Women's Future Conference. And I was like, well, it's going to be virtual, and I think virtual is great because if you need to record it in advance, you could I literally kill virtual. So I'm like, anyway.
You're like, I got this. I got you, boo.
Yeah. So you've done all sorts of speaking, but before we dive into some of that, I just want to dive into your backstory and how you became such a leader and a woman that is interested in empowering other women to realize their value.
Well, my backstory, yes. I think it's because of the tragedy that I went through with my ex-husband and the divorce and the abuse and the kidnapping, and I went missing. And during my struggle in that marriage, I was silent. I didn't have comfort. I didn't report the abuse that was happening to me. And so coming out of that, I told myself, I really never want to feel or have another woman feel like they're alone in a situation. I think that if we were to empower each other a little bit more, then maybe we would be able to circumvent some of these problems or get out of them faster. And it just gave me a different mindset. And I started comparing myself to my mom as well. I started comparing myself to the situations that my mom went through and realizing that she was always alone and that she ran these businesses, right? She ran 2 to 3 businesses, had 4 kids, you know, cooking, cleaning, just the woman who did it all. But she was always alone. And so that made me realize that we have a pattern, and we don't want our negative or our bad or our insecurities to come out because of judgment that women give to each other. And so how do you circumvent, or how do you change a woman's judgment? By changing your own first, and then by empowering yourself and getting around other women who are supportive and loving of you. And then you continue to create and expand on that support and love. And you find different organizations. And of course, you're going to have some people that are not going to get along with you, and some people that are just not going to like you. That happens everywhere. But it's more evolvement and more powerful when you have a good group of strong women that love you, that truly, truly love you.
Oh my gosh, you are speaking my language today, Sarah. That's the whole reason why I started the Sisterhood of Sweat was, way back in the day when I had to leave my situation behind. It was very abusive, and just remembering how alone I felt without support. And in my heart, I just remember thinking someday when I'm through this mess and I'm over it and I have the resources, I want to have a place for women where they can feel supported and not alone and feel safe, and all the things that I didn't have at the time when I needed them. And I could relate to you so much about that aloneness, and just being in a dire situation like that. Walk me through the feelings you were having when you were in that marriage, and just the kidnapping itself, because you just glossed over that.
Wow, that's going to be a long conversation now. When I went through what I went through, I was very shocked that I was in that situation in the first place. I've always been very strong-minded, very opinionated. Nobody really ran over me. I was raised very, very well, very religious. I had no reason to end up in a situation that I did end up in. I married a guy I had just met. I was very naive. I didn't date a lot because I was not allowed. So this knight in shining armor came out in 2 months, and I married him. I didn't know very much about him. And now I could preach for years about you don't know the real person until after 6 months, like
the representative is who
yeah,
you got.
the representative.
Yeah.
And I was just upset with myself for ending up in a relationship that I did. And I think that disappointment in me didn't allow me to get out of it, because I kept telling myself, well, you put yourself in this, you figure this out, you make it work. And I was raised that way. So I was going to eat it and make it work because I put myself in that situation. I should have been smarter. And so I was already mad at myself. And I think when we get mad at ourselves, we hold ourselves back from real growth. We're holding on to ego. We're holding on to negativity. And we don't end up creating a better mindset for ourselves. And so there's no real growth or progression. And I think that as women, us not sharing that with other women won't help them evolve. So we share that more and share the bad, but show the great that comes out of it. I mean, because of that experience, I feel so much more powerful, and I feel like I can empower my daughters more and any other woman that I come across of, because I own it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. And so when you were talking about being in this situation, and you had to have a transformation from victim to victor. How did that all evolve, and when did you flip that switch?
When I walked across the border. I was shaking. I was scared. There was a point when I was kidnapped. I was handcuffed to the back seat, the bottom parts of the car, you know, where you have the seats end at the bottom. So he had handcuffed my feet and my arms laying outwise. And when I came out of that, and I actually walked across the border in his jacket and his jeans, because I had no clothes. He had ripped and thrown all mine away. So I had been naked for 2 days, you know, behind this thing. And then so I was wearing his clothing. I'm walking across the border. I'm beaten. You can't even recognize. My face is so swollen. I'm coming across the border, and I told myself, you're not going to cry. I had tears coming down my eyes, and I said, you're not going to cry. What are we going to do to fix this? Your mom is probably scared to death. She could probably have a heart attack. We need to take care of this right away. So I started going into survival mode. Like, hey,
I know
what is
that
my
mode.
next step?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that was my first mindset. So when I got to across the border, the Border Patrol gentleman looked at me and he was like, ma'am. And I said, take down this phone number, call my mother and tell her I'm alive. It's the first thing we're going to do. Then you and I can have any conversation you want, but you call my mom and you tell her I'm alive. And he was like, okay. Like, so he did it. And then he took me into a room,
I'm
and then
impressed.
and they interviewed me and everything else. And I sat there and I didn't cry. And then when my mom came, she was just bawling and crying, and I held her and I was like, it's okay. I'm alive. Like, I'm here. We're going to get through it, Mom. I am okay. And
Oh my gosh.
that was the first start of my mindset being, okay, one, it's so easy to be bitter and angry.
Right.
And I told myself, I'm not going to be that person. I am not going to be bitter. I already got myself into the situation. Thankfully for the grace of God, I got out of it.
Yes.
I will not be bitter. I'm going to do something with this.
I love that. That's exactly, I mean, so much I was in my marriage, and I was raised a certain way with, you know, in a religious household with values, morals, and you do what you say you're going to do. And when you make a vow, it is a vow, like you take it seriously. And I just think that I had some misconceptions around what we're supposed to endure. And
I think it's because when you're brought up in that type of background, you date to marry. You don't date to date. One, because you're not supposed to be having sex before marriage. You're not, you know, all these guidelines that you grow up with. So you date with the intent to find that partner without the understanding of finding out personality.
Or who that person is. What do you want? What do you not want? Right?
Yeah, it's very scary. So educating our daughters now to understand themselves and love themselves first before they go out to date, I think would teach women or young girls a better way to manage emotion and figure out, does this person really match me? I always use this phrase, I can like you, but not love you. Or I can love you and not like you. And your goal when you're going to marry somebody is you want to like them and you want to love them, not have either or.
Yeah, because it's true respect in it, you know, I always say, you know, we were taken from the rib so we could walk beside our partner, where we weren't taken from the heads, you know, so we'd be over them, or taken from the foot so we'd be trampled under them, but just together, to walk together and support each other. And I want to speak a little bit to the voice. There's so many things I want to talk about today. Oh my gosh. But the voice, I felt my mom didn't really have a voice. Like, and I think that I was raised in the church where women didn't have back then as much of a voice. Why do you think it is so important to have a voice and to teach our daughters and girls and everybody out there that women need to have a voice?
You know, I really love the way you say that. And I have concerns sometimes when people say, well, women, you know, should voice themselves. But we should still have a certain set of values and morals when we are voicing ourselves. There's a way to lead, right? And lead with your voice so that you get buy-in and support, as opposed to you leading with an opinion and causing disarray or causing people to ununite. And so when we use our voice, we want to make sure that we're using our voice with facts. You know, there's a book I read by, and I went to one of her trainings. She's amazing. Cy Wakeman. It's called No Ego. She really strips down the use of the voice and the use of our ego, and that they two have to be separated. And in order for you to truly lead, you really have to strip yourself of your personal ego to be able to say, I can truly lead the team that I'm around. I now have a voice because it's not based on my personal opinion or the ego the way I'm feeling. It's based on factual information, and I want to lead you to move forward with that. So give buy-in with those facts, and you can lead in such a better way.
Yeah, I love that. That's perfect. Now how did you ever get into heating and air conditioning in this it is more of a male dominated space?
My dad and my mom and my older brother and myself, we had been working in it since we were little. I was answering phones from the house. I was a dispatcher on weekends after hours from school, until they finally bought an office and they set up out of the house. And so we started in it very young. Of course, we all have different dreams. I wanted to be an attorney. I went to work with attorneys for a while. And then I was like, I don't want to be an attorney. I don't want to do this. And during that time, my father and my brother had come to a standpoint where communication was getting lost. And my brother had gone from the business a few times and had come back. And they were like, what are we going to do? Are we going to close the company, or how are we going to grow this? So they came to me, and that's when I came into the business full time, because I was always doing financials for them since '97. But I came into the business full time and started running the business, started working the business from the bottom up. I learned every aspect of what the AC stuff did. I read every single invoice. I would talk to every single customer. I needed to know where the growth was going to come from. And I ended up loving it. It was fun. It was technical. I could understand stuff. A technician would talk to me, and I'd call my dad, and I'd be like, this is what he said. He's like, no, he's trying to make you, he's pulling the rug over you. This is why. Tell him to do this. Tell him to do that. So I learned so much, and I fell in love with it. And through Atlas, the business, I've been able to lead the community because we're able to give back. And I think that's what feeds me. Being actually able to be involved in organizations through the business, being able to represent the business in community support, leading things or giving money, contributing money to causes that can create change. It fills me so much that it just makes my love for the business even bigger than just it's a business. For me, it's like really leading the community.
And how do you lead in a male-dominated business?
I laugh because some of the stuff, wow. I get called, in the beginning especially, I would get calls like, I want to speak to the man in charge. I don't want to talk to you. And I'm like, I am the man in charge.
I love it.
And they would say, no, there was another older man. I want to talk to him. I said, well, he's no longer in charge. Well, I want to speak to him. I've been dealing with him for years. I want to speak to him. And I was like, okay, let me give you his cell phone. And I'd call my dad and I'd be like, so-and-so is refusing to have conversation with me. He only wants to speak to you. I'm going to let you call him. I said, this is the deal. And he goes, I don't need to know the deal. I'll call him. And then my dad would call him. And I was really upset because I was like, I just felt like the rug just got pulled out of me. And I hung up with my dad, and I thought I wanted him to say, oh, don't worry about it. I won't call him, or I won't deal with him, or just, I wanted him to say something to reassure me that I am the one in charge. Right. And so he called him, but 2 minutes later, the man calls back and says, I need to speak to Sarah. And so I get on the phone, and he goes, your dad told me he has nothing to do with the business, so I have to deal with you if I'm going to get anything done. And that was like super empowering for me. That really made me own the position and be okay with people being confused about who's the man in charge. That's just one thing, I mean, there's just so many other stories about leading in a man's world, things where my technicians would be made fun of going to pick up vendor equipment because they would be like, oh, you work for a woman? I'm the only woman running the business in our area. So they're like, you work for a woman? Why would you want to work there? Go work for a real man. Like, things that they would tell my technicians. It's been interesting.
Oh my gosh. I've always been in a male dominated field since I launched into, working after I left the X. And it's interesting. But how do you lead and still, be feminine? You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I feel like you can lead differently. We don't have to just lead with the masculine. We can lead with the feminine.
So I had a really interesting conversation with one of my technicians one time. He stole from us. And I had a customer call me and say, your technician was trying to do work on the side. My wife paid him cash. I'm so sorry. I got mad at her. We don't do that. I know you personally. I'm just letting you know this is what happened. And I was so upset. So I called the technician in and I said, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to terminate you. And he looked at me and he said, what happened? And I said, you did work at such and such location and you stole from us. She paid you cash and you accepted it. And that is wrong. And when I said that, I had tears coming down my eyes because I was so hurt because I had done so much with this technician. We had been involved, it had been 2-year relationship, 2-year building, 2-year training.
Right.
And I had tears come down my eyes.
Yes.
And I wiped them and I said, I'm sorry, I'm still a girl. At the end of the day, I'm still a girl. And that hurt me. What you did hurt the company and it's hurt me personally. And I can't accept it. You need to go. So, I mean, we are women, and it's like they tell me, you dress like that all the time. Well, yeah, I like to wear high heels and look pretty. Like I like to do my hair and do, have makeup, and that's always going to be me. And that's who I'm going to represent. I walked into a board meeting. All the men were in jeans and their work shirts. And I come in my dress and my high heels and they're talking to me like I'm the secretary. And they're like, well, she's the secretary. And I was like, no, I'm the president of the Rio Grande Valley ACA Association. I'm running that association. It was the fastest growing association in the state of Texas. And they passed over me because we went to a Texas meeting. They passed over me 2 to 3 times and kept referring to me as the secretary. And I thought, somebody told me once, well, maybe you should have gone in jeans and down dressed a little bit. I'm like, I'm not going to down dress who I am because somebody else is uncomfortable or cannot get over the fact that I'm a woman and I can hold these positions.
So good. So good. And it just, everything you're saying, I could echo. It was probably the Dr. Trina Wiggins that I just had on recently. The episode hasn't come out yet, but they would ask, her, where's the doctor? Or, talk to her like she was the assistant. If her husband was there, they would speak to him, but like just pass right over her. Like, she couldn't possibly be a doctor, African-American woman, at 5'2". They just like passed over her. And it was, very, in all ways, it was discrimination, just total. And I just think these things in the 20th century should not still be going on. I probably shouldn't get started on that.
Yeah, let's not go into Trump.
Like there's just too much there, right?
2020, what a year.
Oh my gosh. So when I started into management, because you know how we are, we're women, we're nurturers, and for me, I liked people liking me and I'm people pleased, and he could see that in me. So he told me to read Attila the Hun as my management indoctrination.
Wow.
Yeah, and so can I just tell you, like, this was the best boss. I mean, for a lot of lessons that I learned. I remember, somebody coming wanting a refund and crying because it was a female, and crying and crying, and my heart was just like I wanted to give her a refund. He's like, no. He's like, this is the best thing for her. She needs to get away from those kids, a few days a week. Like it was then I was selling like gym memberships, and he's like, she needs this membership. And so then I had to say no to her and just like watch the tears. But it toughened me